The 24th Amendment deals with banning and abolishing the poll tax. Before the passage of the 24th Amendment in 1964, many states had laws in which you had to pay a tax in order to enjoy your right of self government. In order to have a voice, in order to have suffrage, you had to pay money to the state in order to have that. Um, Most people argued, many people argued, and saw this for what it was. It was a way of limiting voting rights to people um, who were poor, who were of low income, and trying to stop them from being able to vote. Poll taxes especially were used as a means of trying to discourage minorities from being able to vote. People who, because their suffrage and voting rights had been restricted, had less and less of a voice, and had been persecuted and oppressed legally through the law because they could not use their voice. That these poll taxes were one of many different obstacles that were put in place by discriminatory Jim Crow laws and other laws that were used to try to make it more and more difficult for African Americans or people of other ethnicities to be able to have full suffrage and voting rights. This amendment made it that anyone, rich or poor, enjoyed the same right to vote. Last but not least, the 26th Amendment. The 26th Amendment, as you can see by all these young people with their lips taped up, finally gave voting rights to all persons age 18 and up. Before this time, the voting age was 21 federally. Now, 1972, we were still in the Vietnam War. The average draft age, the average age of a soldier serving in the Vietnam War was 19. The age of draft age of eligibility was 18 years old. I should update on my typing, but let's move on. Many of the people who have been drafted in the Vietnam War had opposed the war, but were forced or conscripted into serving by their government. And many people argued that this is unfair. If the government can force me to fight in a war, the government can force me to serve in the military, to kill or possibly die in the name of my country, then I should have a right to vote for the people who are sending me in that war. With the lower voting age of the 26th Amendment, now anyone, once you turn 18, if you're able to serve in the military, you're able to vote within your elections. Unfortunately, those who are 18 to 29 remain our lowest attending age group to hit the polls and vote. And that's super unfortunate because if something goes bad, you, young folks, are the people who have to deal with it the longest and often are subject to the bad end of bad legislation. So get out, have your voice heard, and vote. And that leads us to our last question. So unless you're able to vote, you don't have a voice in our government, hence why those people's mouths are taped up. So when you don't have a voice in the laws, well, the laws can be used much more effectively against you. So throughout the past few units, we've discussed how you as students within a school have reduced rights until you're 18. So is it arguable that if you could vote, if you had a voice in elections, that students' rights would have greater definition? You'd have a greater protection of your students' rights? So my question for you is, should the voting age be reduced? Should students who are disenfranchised and as a result have less protection within the law for their rights of free speech and so on and so forth, should the voting age be reduced so that they can have greater protection of their rights? Within your notes, I'll give you a copy of some of the other important amendments. Make sure you take a look at those. They also reflect on some of your vocabulary. I'm not going to expand on them too much because the movie is going too long. So that concludes our movie on the Bill of Rights and other amendments. Thanks for doing all the lessons. I look forward to our discussion. Have a great day.